morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, hello. I'm not sure when you're listening to this, but you are listening to the Portsmouth Proud podcast. I'm your host, Alexia Washington, the Public Information Officer for P-Town's finest, the Portsmouth, Virginia Police Department. We serve a community that's not too far from the ocean, not too far from the bay, right on the river, and we're producing this podcast for you, for the people of Portsmouth, so that you know what the vision is from the PPD for the city as it pertains to law enforcement, as well as the plan and how you can play a part in it. This is episode 8 of the Portsmouth Proud podcast, and today we're going to be discussing community policing, and we have the perfect guest to have this conversation. We welcome Assistant Chief Renado Prince. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Well, thank you for the invite.
So before we get started or start talking about community policing, can you give us a little background? Where are you from?
A little bit of everywhere. I was born in Baltimore and transported to North Carolina at the age of 10. From there, I grew up and ended up in the Air Force, and I consider myself from all over the world.
Okay.
Because I've been so many places. My origination point out of North Carolina is a small place called Bolivia, just outside of Wilmington, North Carolina, which is a port city, just like Portsmouth is.
Okay.
A little bit larger.
Bolivia, North Carolina?
Yes, ma'am.
I had never heard of that. Bolivia,
and
North Carolina.
You probably never will again.
Bolivia, North Carolina. So how long have you been a police officer?
All in all, over 40 years.
Okay.
So I say that because it's always been my aspiration to be a police officer. That was something that I admired as a child. And people used to ask children, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Right, right.
And I said, police officer. When I saw the opportunity, when I joined the Air Force, that's what I chased after. Even though my scores were higher, I wanted to be a police officer, which required a lower score. I kind of ended up there somehow, and never looked back, and I never will.
Okay. In the Air Force, what's that job title? Is that security forces? Is that what is that called?
It's split. When I first went in, it was a law enforcement specialist. It was its own career track. At some point, somebody decided that providing security for aircraft and nuclear weapons was the same thing as being a law enforcement officer. I disagree.
Oh, okay.
However, I didn't have a say-so in that. So now it's security forces is what it is.
Okay, okay. So what inspired you? You said you wanted to be a police officer since you were a child, but what was it about a police officer that was like, you know what, I want to be that?
I don't know. Maybe it was the things that I saw the police officers doing during my time frame when I was a child in Baltimore. I actually had a dog named Duke that caught somebody in our backyard and held them until the police got there.
Okay.
The police came there, and I was impressed with their response. My dog, good job, but I was more impressed with the police officers that showed up and actually gave the dog a commendation for what he did.
Your dog held
Yes, ma'am.
a criminal until the police came?
Yes, ma'am.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I've had a good life.
That's okay. How old were you when that happened?
I was 8.
Wow. Okay. What did you command the dog
I
to do? I
didn't do
that?
it. I watched. It was a show for me.
Okay.
Until the police, they were actually chasing the guy. What happened? And he got into our backyard, and the dog was protecting me.
Got it.
The guy just got in the way. The police got the guy.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So that experience happened. You were impressed with the response from the police officers. So that's what caused you to want to be a police officer. What do you love most about it?
You get to interact with people and help them. Generally, we encounter people on one of the worst days of their life, mm-hmm. where they're traumatized, they're a victim, they're hurt, they're confused, whatever it is. And when you do your job correctly, you get a chance to help someone. You get a chance to make a difference in their life.
Right.
And that difference that you make at that time may impact them for the rest of their lives. If it's positive, they will remember you. And it's not that I'm trying to be remembered, I just want to help people. And that's hard to do in today's world.
Right. So switching or transitioning to the topic of community policing, communities are made up of people, and police officers help people. We hear about community policing in the news, and with different times when different situations or incidents occur, we hear about community policing. But what exactly is community policing? Because I'm thinking, police officers have always helped people, but this seems like it's a particular strategy or a particular type of policing. So what is it?
So community policing defined is an agreed upon partnership between the community and the police on how they want to be governed by the police. Community policing is actually problem solving that focuses on the offender, the location, and the victim. Okay. And when I say it focuses on them, that's the triangle for crime. And community policing allows you to problem solve by analyzing the location, the victim, and the offender. Okay. What parts of that can you control? Okay. That's what community policing focuses on. It's also geographic policing in that you are in the community, the officers are assigned to a geographic location every day. So the citizens in that geographic location get to see the same officer and hopefully interact and know that officer, so they build that partnership and have the confidence that when they make a call, they see that officer, they know who he or she is, and they know they can depend on them because of the partnership and the interaction that they've already had. Okay. So how does that differ from a traditional policing model? So it's actually a retrograde to the original policing model. Okay. At one time, the police officers came from the communities. They were actually stationed in the communities that they served and that they lived in. Right. They knew the people. They got larger. Policing became more desperate for people, and they just started recruiting people from all over. Let's go to the Vietnam era veterans that were coming back, who were able to face traumatic situations and react calmly. Okay. So it just dispersed, and we went to a different type of crime fighting where they expected the officers to be active, out engaging criminals, out guessing them, out thinking them, like you used to see on the TV shows. Right. Didn't Columbo. Work. Yeah. Okay. It didn't work very well. So when I say we went back to it, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. The ideal version of community policing would be Mayberry RFD, for people who saw that. Now, people say, well, how does that work? Well, is that Andy Griffith? That was Andy Griffith. Okay, so I'm just making sure. Yeah. So think about it. Andy knew everybody. Everybody knew Andy. Yes. Everybody knew Barney. However you want to know Barney. Right. But everybody knew who they had to go to. Andy knew the problems that faced the town because people interacted with him. They had trust. There was communication, cooperation, collaboration, and there was a partnership that allowed them to interact and have a successful law enforcement engagement. Okay. Yeah. So by doing that, what we're doing is we're trying to break it back down to that level, and that's what community policing truly is. You knowing the officer or the police department and the people they're in, and they know you. They know the community needs. You know who to go to. You know who to call. You know who's going to come, and you know what to expect from them. So, okay, following that, the Mayberry theme, how do you do that when the officers don't necessarily live in those specific communities? So like Andy he lives there. So how do you work there, but how do you build that same type of trust? Or what are some strategies that are used to build trust? Maybe not at that same level, that was the TV show, but how do you do that as? So what we try to promote are interactions with civic leagues. Okay. At their meetings. We have events in different neighborhoods, different locations, and we have the officers on those scenes take our coffee with a cop. Right, okay. They're done all the way around the city, different locations. Right. We want the people that live in that specific location to come out because we have the officers that are working there in that location at those events. Okay. We encourage officers to get out and walk on foot, leave their car, or get on a bike and ride, you have a better chance of encountering a citizen and having an interaction, a conversation, by being available. It's hard to talk to somebody that's driving by your house at 25, 30, 40 miles an hour.
That's true.
But if they're walking by and they say, hey, how are you? That's a chance to engage the community. It's not really that hard. Where it's hard for us is the amount of officers that we don't have.
Right.
Trying to get what we do have out and make it available to the community so they can do things. We're working on that right now. We just got in a bunch of e-bikes. So we're going to put officers on e-bikes and say, go into the community.
I saw those bikes downstairs. They look very heavy, very big. But I saw them also, they were riding them on Saturday. So I saw that as well. Or is it Friday? They were riding them on Friday. So, yeah. Right.
And it's going to be a good interaction piece. And we also have regular bikes. If you're looking for one, we got one that'll fit you.
Okay. So I was talking to Sergeant Funkhauser last week, and we were talking about the Community Enhancement Division. And she made a point to say how important it was for the officers to speak with residents because it's part of crime prevention. A lot of times when we're talking about law enforcement, we are talking specifically about like the crime fighting or the response to crime. But it's important, I think, prevention is a key component of policing as well. Would you agree with that?
I would say there's a couple parts. There's prevention, intervention, and then you get the enforcement piece.
Okay.
Prevention is simply educating the public on steps they can take to better protect their property and themselves. That's really important.
Okay.
You can make yourself a victim by placing yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time under the wrong conditions. Let's face it.
Right.
You can remove yourself from that triangle by saying, that looks like a dangerous place right there. I don't need to be there. Oh, by the way, there are no street lights here. I shouldn't walk through there.
Okay.
Simple steps.
That's prevention.
That's prevention.
So prevention is educating your community.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, the intervention part, that's part of us changing things, like SEPTED, where we go in and say, you have a beautiful home, but look at the bushes. People can hide behind your bushes. Why don't you cut them down so that they're below the windows? Clear out a space behind it, or let them grow all the way up to the wall so nobody can get behind them. You need to put lighting in your driveway so it's not dark, because when you pull up, it's completely dark in your driveway. How about some of those solar lights? They look nice. Stick those out here.
Okay.
For stores, we would say to the business, unclutter your windows so we can see inside. Take those big decals off so when we're driving by or somebody's walking by, they can see inside the store. So if there's something happening, we can get the report, or we can see and respond ourselves.
So that's intervention. So there is a prevention portion of educating, but it seems like the intervention portion is a little bit of education involved in that, but it seems like it might be more direct, more hands-on, or is it by request of the person or business?
It's both.
Okay.
They can request that we come and maybe give a class on different subjects, maybe helping their employees know how to more safely leave the business after hours when it's really dark.
Okay.
Or escorting money from businesses the correct way and the wrong way. You know, walking out with a big bank bag in the middle of the day at the same time every day.
Right.
That happens.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Things like that. So
you tell them to vary the times that they leave and have a less conspicuous
put it in a bag.
Money,
put it in a purse.
Yeah.
Change your times. There's no need to do it. If you're predictable, you can become a victim a whole lot more easily.
Right.
So mix it up. There are a bunch of different pieces, and they kind of intermingle at different points. We do the best we can either way, though. So.
And then in community policing, of course, there's the enforcement portion of policing, which is, we say, law enforcement. And I think that's the part that most of us think of when we are thinking of police officers. But it's not just the enforcement part. It is the prevention, the intervention, and the enforcement is part of policing.
It's the whole thing.
It's the whole thing.
PIE, prevention, intervention, and enforcement.
Oh, okay. I never heard PIE. I like that. It's pie. Okay. Well, I think this is a good time or a good place to take our first community break. And when we return, we'll talk about how Portsmouth trains its officers to be successful at community policing.
Are you considering a career in law enforcement? Sign on today as a Portsmouth police officer and receive up to $1,500 if you're already Virginia certified. We offer a $1,000 allowance for a bachelor's degree and a $500 allowance for an associate's degree on top of your base pay. Officers can also earn additional income on time spent in court and at community events. Visit our website at portsmouthpd.us for more information on how to apply.
National Night Out will be here before you know it, so mark your calendars for Tuesday, August 6th, and join us at Festival Park for the ultimate community gathering. That's August 6th from 3 to 8 p.m. at Festival Park. See you at National Night Out. So we're back with Assistant Chief Renado Prince, and we were discussing before the break about how to build trust within communities, but also he had mentioned something called PIE, so it's prevention, intervention, and enforcement is, it makes up what police officers do. But now, just want to ask, how do we, as the Portsmouth Police Department, train our officers to engage with community policing?
So what we do now is not all-out 100% community-oriented policing.
Okay.
We are phasing that in. Right now we have a community enforcement division.
Mm-hmm.
Community policing on a whole is done by the entire police department. Right now we have a specialized group that goes out and they do community engagement initiatives. They do inspections. They do all the nice stuff that we want to do.
Right.
But based on our size right now, we're not able to.
Okay.
That's part of it. But the chief has a vision, and we're getting ready to change up the way we're doing it, where our next graduating classes will attend, and when I say graduating classes, I mean our new rookies, will attend a full-on 40-hour community-oriented policing course sponsored by COPS with the Department of Justice.
Okay.
So what that does is it teaches problem solving in the community. It teaches community engagement initiatives. It teaches identifying problems and handling those problems as they're identified. Mm-hmm. It teaches analysis, all of that stuff that you need to do so that when you see a problem, you know what to do. And people say, well, I know what to do. Well, can you do it by yourself? When you're doing community policing, you identify the problem, you engage the community, and you use community resources to resolve or solve that problem. It's not all on the police. Remember, it's the police and the community together. It's the police are supposed to be a part of the community, not apart from the community.
Right.
So
okay.
They need to respond as one and say, this is a problem. This house right here with the broken windows, this house right here where they hang out at night and they just sleep there, that's our problem, not a police problem. That's our problem because it's in our community. What do we as a community need to do? Help us and guide us, officer.
Okay.
And that's where the officer steps in and says, okay, that's the house. Do we know whose house it is? Why, that's Mr. Smith's house, but he doesn't live here anymore. Do you know where he's at? And they guide you to that direction. The officer can follow up from there and use the city's resources to interact with Mr. Whoever and say, hey, you have a property that you're not taking care of.
Right.
We're going to ask you to willingly take some steps to board it up, help us to put trespass on it, so on and so forth. The community also can say, you know what, it looks bad. Why don't we have a get-together day and we clean it up so it's not so attractive to people who want to just loiter there in some derelict property.
Right.
It's a holistic approach to policing and problem solving. And we're the lead. I'm not stepping out of the way. We're the lead.
Right.
But we require the community to help us help them.
Yes, so Sergeant Funkhauser last week had given an example of there was a house where the lady who owned it was deployed, and I guess she had been away for a while, so like the trees were overgrown and there wasn't anyone coming there to like look. There was no property management being done, so people started loitering. Some, she said, were squatting in the house, and they had the city come and like cut the trees down and just basically go through the steps that you were talking about. That's with community enhancement. But you're saying true community-oriented policing, it wouldn't just be the community enhancement division, it would be any officer that is assigned to that particular area would be able to do those things.
That's correct.
Okay.
And that's the way it's supposed to work. It's that few, they're doing a good job. Mm-hmm. Imagine all of us trying to do that.
Right. And so our newest officers are going to be attending, you said, about a 40-hour course on community policing. Do they discuss community policing at the academy, or is that something that is really the responsibility or falls on the department that hires them?
It's a topic, but it's not taught the way that we know it's supposed to be taught. They have a limited amount of time. And like I said, the true community-oriented policing course is 40 hours. And that's the only thing it's about. To cram another 40 hours into the course that they have it's not feasible for what they're trying to do. They're trying to produce an officer that's trained to engage criminals, make arrests, know the law, so on and so forth. Community policing is a part of it, but that's not their main focus.
Got it. So the other question would be, when you're dealing with community policing and kind of going back to the Mayberry example that you were giving, that community is kind of homogenous. When you come to Portsmouth, you might have more diversity or more people of color or the communities that are being policed, and you don't necessarily have, I'm not sure what our statistics are, but you have a lot of different racial groups that might be the majority of police officers. How does that play into being able to build trust in communities or challenge the ability to build trust in the communities?
Most agencies try to hire based on the demographic of the community that they serve. That generally doesn't work out because we have a non-discriminatory clause when it comes to hiring. So that would be to say, well, no, we have our cutoff for white officers. We can't go any further there. So we don't do that. What we do is we seek officers who are able to communicate with people on a regular basis. We look for people who can sit down and hold a conversation with almost anybody. We encourage that because that's the key. Communication is the first thing that I said about building partnerships. And then I say communication, cooperation, collaboration to build those partnerships. I dropped caring when I should have added that in there. A caring, committed agency. We need officers who care about the community that they serve. How do you make that? Well, you can't. You look for people who want to make a difference, and that's what we're doing. We tell them, we hired you. You told us that you want to make a difference. Well, be the difference. Don't just make it. Be the difference and show the community that you're concerned, that you're engaged, that you want to make life better for them. So that's what we actually look for, and that's the way we try to make that change so that we can have those positive interactions and that communication that needs to happen between the police and the citizens.
Are there different courses or classes that the officers take to bridge that gap? If there are, it doesn't have to just be racial differences, but just cultural differences could also be in play of understanding how to communicate. So if you're coming from some place that I'm from the north and then coming to the south, there's a different way of communicating. Are there any classes that help address those issues? We
have several. We go through implicit bias courses. As a matter of fact, I think they ran one recently. We do classes on interactions with juveniles. We do a lot of things that are based on race and trying to make you recognize that you may house some prejudice. Everybody houses some prejudice. Even if it's like, I can't stand broccoli. Well, that's your prejudice. And by identifying and recognize that you have some bias towards a group or whatever, you can better respond to it by controlling that bias and realizing that I need to pay more attention because I have this bias in my head already.
Okay.
So let me focus better. We go through several different classes on a recurring basis just to deal with that, so that we can have officers that are aware of what's going on. The population here is 56% African American.
Okay.
Is that high? No, this is Hampton Roads.
Right.
Okay. But we need officers that recognize I will be dealing with a majority African American community.
Right.
Is that anything special? People are people. That's what we're trying to teach.
People are people. Right.
Treat them with respect and courtesy. Period.
That goes a long way with anybody.
It does.
Yes.
Don't take away their dignity. If you take away a person's dignity, what do they have left?
Right. Nothing.
Exactly.
You have nothing.
So
yeah.
You don't know how they're going to react
right.
after you take everything away.
Right. That's true. That's true. You have some nice little little comments that make you stop and think.
40 plus years.
So, with that, you had mentioned that it requires the community. So we know, like, our officers can depend or direct people to city-based agencies. But it's not just city agencies that are part of the community. Of course, it's residents, but there's also like other organizations within the community that maybe we can point that offer resources that we would be able to point residents to. How do we as a department reach out or develop those relationships with those organizations, and how do they play into community policing? So
you're correct, and it's not just the citizens, it's businesses, it's faith-based organizations, there are community groups, there are nonprofits, it's everybody, because it's all of our city.
Right.
And how do we reach out to them? Well, we're actually in the process of hiring a coordinator.
Coordinator is going to be running the Citizens United program.
That's correct. We have profit organizations that are willing to step out and try to intervene and help the community. We have a lot of pieces. Well, people say, well, the police department's going to handle that. No, we need somebody to help us with that.
Right, okay.
And I say that because our original function, if you want to get down to what police were supposed to be doing, we were supposed to try to protect and serve, and we were to arrest people who violated the law. Nothing else.
Okay.
Fast forward, we are now somehow the one you call when you don't know who to call. Example, my child is acting up and I don't know what to do with him. Well, that's not a crime. It could be. It could be
on the verge.
But people call us for that. Now think about it this way.
Or a crime
when
might
people
happen.
say, exactly, my child's acting up and I don't know what to do. And the officer goes over and the child simply does not want to go to school.
Okay, yeah.
Still not a police problem yet. Have you spoken with the school and maybe get a counselor involved before you call the police? Oh, while he's talking to you or she's talking to you, a crime just happened down the street where somebody was robbed.
Okay, yeah, it's true.
So we're trying to get back to our core function.
Right.
We want to prevent, we want to be there, but we need for the community not to rely on us for parenting skills, for those things that we are not equipped for.
Right. I think it's easy because you call 911, the police kind of have to respond, everyone else can kind of ignore you, so it's kind of, or it feels like they're ignoring you. So I understand it, but I feel like the community policing model kind of allows you to put the primary function of policing, the focus, which you said was law enforcement area, make that the focus, and then push the other things to where they actually need to go.
Correct.
So you had mentioned about problem solving. So like when you're looking like online about community policing, they kind of separate community-oriented policing from problem solving policing. But how we're having this conversation, it's all intertwined. It's not a separate thing. So how much time is spent with officers of doing that problem solving aspect of policing? Or learning, training to do that?
is OJT or on-the-job training every day.
Okay.
Because they have to think outside the box. There are no groundhog days in law enforcement.
Okay.
Every day you come in and it's something different. You take those experiences, and when you go to that next call, you may or may not be able to apply what you've learned, but you have to problem solve for people when you encounter them, because we do get these strange calls. We get something that may or may not be law enforcement related, but like you said, it's easy to call 911.
Right.
We're there. We have to do something. So we step outside of our little box, and we come up with inventive ways sometimes, but we try to problem solve based on scanning the situation, doing a quick analysis of the situation, reflecting on possible outcomes, and trying to reach a desired conclusion that will benefit all parties involved.
So how does the department handle feedback and complaints from the community, like regarding policing practices? If a resident has an issue, what happens? What can they do for it to be addressed?
First, we have our professional standards unit. If there is a complaint on police services, we ask that they call. Our number's listed. You can do it on the internet. Just find us online and voice what your complaint is. We take all complaints serious. If someone says the officer acted inappropriately, they were rude, we want to know, because we need our officers to be seen as humane, to be seen as people trying to serve people. We're not perfect. We make mistakes.
Right. People.
With that said, when we get those complaints, it becomes an employee issue, which means that when we take action, we probably will not be able to tell you what we did, because it may have resulted in a disciplinary action.
Right.
And we can't release that to the public. It's protected by law. What you will get is a message saying that we've received your complaint and we have acted on that complaint and we dealt with it.
Right.
We have to ask you to trust us to believe that we did take action and that we did try to do the right thing. We have a policy manual that is very thick. Officers are required to read and acknowledge those policies, and when they violate those policies, we take action, because there's a liability aspect to it. If we don't take action and those officers continue to make those actions, we don't want to end up on CNN because we're getting sued because we didn't act appropriately and let an officer run on, violate people's rights, be disrespectful, you know.
Right. And you can make the complaint, or praise can happen online. We have like an online portal where you can make those comments. And then we recently just released our professional standards unit had an annual report, and within that report it talks about the external complaints, so you can see how many there were, how they were addressed, and they break it down. So our department does take that seriously.
We got one more.
And then we have, go ahead.
We have something else that the chief wants to add in. We're going to try to get an app so that when officers go to call, they can give the person their card, they can scan a QR code, and they'll get a pop on their cell phone.
Right.
And they'll be able to rate the response and make comments on the services that we provide. That's coming.
Yes.
We're working on that, and that's a positive for us because it's an immediate feedback for the police department on how we're performing.
Right. Okay. Well, I think this is a good place to take our final community break. And when we return, we'll have some final words from Assistant Chief Prince.
Are you considering a career in law enforcement? Sign on today as a Portsmouth police officer and receive up to $1,500 if you're already Virginia certified. We offer a $1,000 allowance for a bachelor's degree and a $500 allowance for an associate's degree on top of your base pay. Officers can also earn additional income on time spent in court and at community events. Visit our website at portsmouthpd.us for more information on how to apply.
National Night Out will be here before you know it, so mark your calendars for Tuesday, August 6th, and join us at Festival Park for the ultimate community gathering. That's August 6th from 3 to 8 p.m. at Festival Park. See you at National Night Out. We're back with Assistant Chief Prince. We've been discussing community policing and our strategies within the city of Portsmouth. Sir, we're so grateful that you took some time today to speak with us. Do you have any final words, any words of wisdom, any advice for the citizens of Portsmouth?
The only thing I would actually say is that we try really hard to address the issues that we face. I say that the people that we have here work really hard, and people say, oh, you're short of officers, you're short of officers. We're not short of officers. Because they work so hard, they're their own force multiplier. Our officers get it done. They're some of the best in this area. I would say they're the best in Hampton Roads. I don't really care what the others say. We have good people.
Right.
And you see them every day. Could we use more people? We certainly could.
Yes.
But what we've got right now, they work hard to keep people in this city safe and provide the services that are needed every day. They're doing a phenomenal job.
They are.
And I can't say that there's anybody else in Hampton Roads that works harder than the Portsmouth Police Department.
Agreed. I just want to say to you, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And I also want to say thank you for listening, and to remember that this is your city, this is our city, so let's work together to make it great.